This meeting of the Public Utility Commission of Texas will come to order to consider matters that have been duly posted with the Secretary of State for August 14th, 2026. Good morning, everyone. Commissioners, just real quick for order of operations, we'll go in order of the agenda today. I requested a procedural update from Commission Counsel on the status of our 765 transmission line projects, and then we'll hear from ERCOT regarding the governor's audit request and what that looks like. We don't have a closed session, so those will be the only items we take up today. So, Ron, since we don't have a consent agenda, do we have anyone? We'll move straight to item number 1, public comment. Has anyone signed up for public comment this morning?
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. We had several signed up to speak this morning. Before Alex calls their names, I would remind each speaker that the Commission can receive public comment on matters that are within the Commission's jurisdiction, except for pending contested case matters. In the interest of time, speakers will be limited to 3 minutes.
Thank you for that. And I know we have some elected officials here today, so let's give them the opportunity to go first.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know if I'm Alex Scheifler. I don't know if I'm completely up to date on which state and local reps we have today. But I guess maybe we'll start with state. I believe it would be Senator Sparks, Representative Buckley, and Representative Slawson.
Chairman Sparks, yeah, just take a seat. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
It should be on if you talk close to it.
Is it on?
Yep. Pull it real
Got
close.
But
It doesn't even sound odd.
can you hear me now? No?
You want to just give him that one, Ron? There we go.
People don't generally have a hard time hearing me. And I tell you, this is a little interesting because I generally see you guys on in the reverse order. So
we're excited. We have a lot of hard-hitting questions for you this morning.
good. Good. I slept well last night. I'm ready. I do. Are you ready?
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. My name's Kevin Sparks. I'm the CEO of Discovery Operating, Inc., a small oil and gas company. I'm also the current senator for District 31, representing the Permian Basin and the Panhandle of Texas. I'm here representing myself and in my official capacity as senator. I've spent my entire career drilling and producing oil and gas in the Permian Basin and in the Panhandle of Texas. Discovery Operating currently produces approximately 20,000 barrels of oil equivalent a day. This is an industry and a region which I know well. The Permian Basin is short on dependable round-the-clock power. While the region has overabundant wind and solar generation, those resources cannot consistently meet future demand. Local gas-fired baseload generation can provide reliable power 24 hours a day, matching the Permian Basin's needs regardless of the time of day or weather conditions. These cross-state high-voltage lines are designed to bring the consistency needed by our industry, but at what cost? Tens of billions of dollars in construction costs, which get socialized into residential electric bills in the form of added transmission fees, permanently affecting hundreds of landowners, many of which are generational farmers and ranchers. The permanent devaluation of tens of thousands of acres of Texas land, some of it the most beautiful land in the state of Texas. Permian Basin Reliability Plan is flawed because it does not address the need for baseload electricity generation in West Texas. The current ERCOT market structure does not send the correct market signals to attract capital for baseload power. The ERCOT market has been distorted for more than 25 years by close to $100 billion of federal tax subsidies to construct intermittent wind and solar projects that distort, and that distortion continues today. West Texas has the natural resources and the capital available to generate all of the power needed in the region and with the correct market signals from ERCOT. The state of Texas has the obligation and the duty to consider all factors and exhaust every alternative before seizing massive amounts of land from private landowners. it would be reprehensible if the state of Texas were to condemn Texans' private land because we, as elected officials, did not have the political will to make the necessary changes to ERCOT to incentivize reliable local generation. I urge you to pause this process and work with the legislature to make the necessary ERCOT adjustments to once again attract private capital to build the baseload generation needed to rebalance our grid portfolio. We must ensure the infrastructure we invest in today provides reliable, efficient power for the next 50 years, not just in West Texas, but across the entire state. Thank you, and I'm willing to take any questions you guys might have.
Thank you, Chairman Sparks. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.
Representative Buckley.
Yeah. Good morning, Chairman Buckley.
Morning. How are y'all?
I'm doing well. How are you this morning?
I'm great. Let's see here. It's both of these. That one. All right. Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman Gleeson and commissioners. My name is Brad Buckley. I'm a veterinarian, a rancher, and a landowner in Bell County, as well as state representative for House District 54. I'm here today on behalf of myself, but more importantly, on behalf of my constituents. The projects being discussed today raise serious questions that deserve additional legislative oversight before irreversible decisions are made. Based on conversations I've had with representatives of the Public Utility Commission and ERCOT, I believe the scope of the proposed 765 kilovolt build-out extends well beyond what was contemplated under House Bill 5066. In fact, it was stated publicly at the Senate Business and Commerce hearing on July 29th that House Bill 5066 does not contemplate 765 kilovolt lines at all. And the primary bill author submitted a letter to the Commission and ERCOT in September of 2024, clearly outlining that any attempt to deploy 765 kilovolt lines should only occur with legislative and stakeholder oversight. Neither has taken place. These facts alone warrant denial of all existing applications for CCN. Raising additional concerns is the attempt by the TDUs to initiate a statewide transmission plan under the guise of a regional transmission upgrade. The contention that House Bill 5066 authorized what is being proposed as a slap in the face to the legislative branch and a rogue interpretation by entities that seek profit and guaranteed returns on investment over honest interpretation of state law. The only remedy to this is denial of all applications for CCN, thus allowing the legislature, the people's representatives, to take up this issue in the next legislative session. Over the last year or more, it has become crystal clear that the process is flawed, unfair, and draconian. The SOAR process has held that many landowners were not afforded access to a public meeting, not afforded their fundamental right per statute to attend a public meeting to learn and engage about a project that could force you to move, create massive loss in property value, and impact one's ability to use their property for their chosen purpose. Those lucky enough to receive notice to attend a public meeting ended up having as much as 10 months or more to retain qualified legal representation, conduct environmental assessments, and other engineering activities. Others were never offered a public meeting and received notice as an impacted landowner less than 30 days prior to the deadline to intervene in their docket. In Bell County alone, more than 1,400 parcels and more than 2,000 owners were notified less than 30 days prior to the deadline, if they were notified at all. There is no more important reason to deny the applications for CCN than this fact alone. Texas landowners are not anti-growth, anti-development, or anti-progress. We want economic opportunity for ourselves, our kids, and our grandchildren. We want a reliable and resilient grid and affordable electricity. It's the flawed process and unfairness to landowners is what brings us here today. But don't get lost in that alone. We care deeply about the policy that underpins this project, the continued reliance on renewable energy over dispatchable energy generation, This project tramples our property rights, and all in pursuit of bad policy that's bad for Texas and our future. Get the policy right, and Texas landowners will be the first to stand up and help you find a solution. But you are not policymakers. The legislature is. And that is the final reason to deny all applications for CCN, put it in the hands of those elected by the people and for the people to be their voice. Thank you very much for your time and attention. God bless you. God bless Texas. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chairman Buckley. Commissioners, questions or thoughts?
Thank you all for
Appreciate you
your
being
time.
here this morning. Thank you.
Yes, Representative Slawson.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you. And don't think I haven't cataloged some of the questions I've had for PUC and state affairs hearings before I came and got on the other side of the microphone this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you, and I echo what my colleagues, Senator Sparks and Representative Buckley, bring to you. We have issues with the product that we're talking about here, the lines, the process for our constituents, and ultimately the voice of the public in this proceeding. I've had the benefit of serving on state affairs in the last several sessions in 21 and 23 as we are addressing how to ensure that we have a stable and reliable grid, particularly after Winter Storm Uri, and as well as with the growth that we're seeing. And I've spent some hours in there with some of you in this room. And we've made some good improvements. I think having 5 of you on this commission instead of 3 was a great improvement. However, I do not believe that what we are seeing in the wake of House Bill 5066 is going to yield an improvement for us. On that dais, when that bill was before us, never did we hear about 765 transmission lines. While we did discuss the shortening of a period from 1 year to 180 days, it was not contemplated then that it would be a project of the massive scale that we're looking at now, with thousands of landowners affected, and frankly, the inability for their voices to be adequately heard when there are that many people trying to intervene and protest in this process. We have seen in documents filed before you that some of those testimonies have not even been read, just because of the scale of response that has been issued. And that's a problem for this commission. It's a problem for me as the representative for House District 59, where this is affected. And it ought to be a problem for the state of Texas in general when we have Texans who are not being heard before their government may take from them their land. I would propose to you that in the next legislative session, we need to address the CCN process, much like many of my colleagues have already written to you about. I think that there are some important improvements we can make to ensure that when additional routes are added later, those landowners get a hearing as well, and that the legislature has an opportunity to weigh in on the policy before you. And I hope that at the end of this process and next week that you will deny the applications and give the people's representatives the opportunity to be heard there. It is a problem, and it's offensive to my constituents and to me that the first opportunity for a legislative hearing on these lines was in a Senate committee last week, and that the legislature has not, as a body, been heard on this yet. And I beg of you that you will deny those applications and allow us to weigh in. Thank you so much for having us here this morning.
Thank you, Representative Slawson. Commissioners, questions? Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
And then I believe we have one county official. Could Kerr Wardlaw come to the front?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kerr Wardlaw, Precinct 1, Verde County Commissioner, rancher, 6 generations, 1884, Verde County. Well, one thing that I was told early on was that this was to power the Permian Basin and that this transmission lines were going out there to power it. Then I was told that this is actually to spawn the birth of data centers across the state, and that this was to set up a grid of power lines and data centers could be popping up everywhere. But just this week, my entire talk changed that I was going to give today because Amazon is going to build a data center in the Pecos area. And they have just announced that they are going to make their own power and it will be gas powered. That proves that the transmission lines are not being put in for the data centers. But it also proves that the Permian Basin is not needing the power in the same way. They can also make their own power the same as the Amazon data center will in the Pecos area. It completely cancels out the need of the 765s. Amazon just went against everything that's been said about data centers needing the transmission lines. So that means that the Permian Basin doesn't need the transmission lines. They disprove each other. And everything that the senators and representatives have said, I totally agree with. They were spot on. They said a whole lot of stuff that I would have said today if I had to, but the main thing that I wanted to point out was the cancellation of data centers versus transmission lines. And everybody in my part of the country would be here, but it's just too far and they can't afford it and they've got work to do. And I've just put out lots of effort to make it to these meetings. I was there and at the meeting last week in the Capitol, and the chairman and the board asked for you all to pause it. And I'm asking for you all to pause it and give it another chance. The House bill is being misrepresented or misused. I think if we go forward with it, it needs some guardrails and regulations. All the senators and representatives are asking y'all to wait and let them have some more input. And there are representatives. No insult to you all. I trust you all. Y'all were appointed by our representatives. But those are our representatives, and they've said what they want. I'll move on, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, questions? Thank you for being here this morning.
I will call up the remaining speakers in groups of 3 by name, starting with Claire Nelson, Elizabeth Kuntz, and Cav Ochoa. If you could sit in the seats on my right. And try to speak directly into the microphone to make sure it picks your voice up, and state your name for the court reporter when you begin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Chairman Gleeson and commissioners. My name is Claire Nelson, and I'm an affected landowner. As a retired cybersecurity professional, I still get nightmares. On July 22nd, 2026, CISA, FBI, NSA, and other U.S. government partners updated a joint cybersecurity advisory warning that Iranian cyber actors are exploiting programmable logic controllers, PLCs, across U.S. critical infrastructure. Then, days later, water and wastewater utilities in at least 12 states reported cyber attacks targeting PLCs. Attackers changed IP addresses and passwords, and in some cases disrupted operators' ability to monitor and control critical systems. The attacks caused loss of water pressure, flooding, and operational disruptions across multiple states, including a precautionary boil water advisory affecting customers in Georgia. This example applies directly to the electric grid. Texas relies on tens of thousands of industrial control devices, including PLCs, protective relays, remote terminal units, RTUs, and other automation controllers. Each improperly secured device can become a potential cyber attack vector. The Texas legislature has already recognized this and other risks through the Texas Grid Security Act, SB 75, and the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act, SB 2116. I encourage you to make cybersecurity a core element of reliability planning, including independent verification of supply chain security, not just attestations. If I told you this iPhone contains no parts from China, would you simply take my word for it? Of course not. You would expect independent verification. Texas should apply that same standard to critical grid infrastructure. Electricity is only reliable if the grid is secure. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and God bless Texas.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Elizabeth Kuntz, and I'm here to pull on your heartstrings a little bit. I have gotten a nickname in the last week after the Senate hearing. Everybody calls me Alamo now, because in my testimony, I invoked Remember the Alamo. That if you remember your Texas history and why Texans fought for their independence, it was based on autonomy and property rights. It's built into us. All of us as Texans hold these deep beliefs, and we count on you to help us protect that. I come from a long line of Texans. I'm a descendant of Sarah Dotson, who designed and flew the first flag over Washington at the Brazos. And so we love our Texas. It goes deep, and you guys got a big job to do. You have a huge responsibility, and I want to help put a face to the people that you're affecting daily. It's our land, it's our property, and like at the Alamo, we will fight to our last breath to try and defend it. And I just want you to keep that in mind as you work through this difficult process and make the decisions that you make. It's us. You can have a perfect plan on paper, and it looks great, textbook perfect. But when it becomes reality and light is shined on it and different perspectives are shined on it, it's not so great. You know, everybody has their own perspective. You guys have a job to do. I've got a ranch to take care of. And so we come from different perspectives, but always remember that someone's perspective is their own reality. It's what they live, it's what they believe, and what they do day in and day out. And I wanted to just remind you that this is more than business. These are lives, and they're being affected tremendously by this build out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Gleeson and Commissioners. My name is Kay Harlow Ochoa. My family and I own and operate a heritage ranch in Verde County. I represent Greenwood Ranch, LLC. I am here to respectfully ask the Public Utilities Commission to verify the need for 765 kilovolts of electrical transmission lines before irreversibly taking land for it. I ask you to direct the Electric Reliability Council of Texas to reappraise 3 765 kilovolt import paths using verified data center loads, the current generation mix, not previous generation mix, a genuine comparison of alternatives to this project, and a withholding of all certification until this work is complete. Also of crucial importance to the security of this state is that more than one of the routes filed under this plan crosses land held by foreign owners covered by the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act. This act was specifically passed to cover these properties north of Laughlin Air Force Base. The applicants pretend that ownership of this land cannot be determined, but a simple search of the Texas Comptroller website confirms that they are indeed owned by a company with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. This connection should be carefully researched before any certificate is issued. To wait until after certification is to wait too long. Finally, please do not make irreversible decisions based on assumptions the state itself is now reconsidering. Thank you.
Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you. Good. Shannon Black and Paul Grimm, please come up.
Good morning.
Good morning. You ready? Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Chairman Gleeson. My name is Shannon Black, and I am from Martin County, near Midland, the Permian Basin. When I was a little girl in the 1970s, OPEC cut oil production, and America experienced an energy crisis. President Nixon spoke on national TV and asked us all to turn off any lights that we weren't using, and he offered other energy-saving tips. Well, simultaneously, many independent oil companies began to drill vertical wells in the Permian Basin to fulfill America's demand for fuel and to ease the energy crisis that was gripping our nation. But they ran into a problem. There was no source of power to run the pump jacks once the wells had been drilled. There were no power lines available to run electricity to them, and there certainly weren't enough generators available to put on site at each oil well and run them in that manner. So they had a problem, but they found an on-site solution. And what that solution entailed was the natural gas that was also being brought up to the surface along with the oil. They simply bled off the natural gas at the wellhead and through a system of pipes. It was routed back to the back of the pump jacks where the combustion engines were, and they powered the oil wells that way. On-site problem, on-site solution. Fast forward to today, and we are being told repeatedly that there's a lack of power in the Permian Basin. Well, I'm from the Permian Basin, and that's hard for me to understand. It's hard for anyone from out there to understand that statement. We watch night and day as huge flares burn natural gas nonstop 24/7. So we have a problem. And the problem is, how do we create power in the Permian Basin? Well, I would like to suggest we capture the natural gas that is so abundant there and build on-site gas-powered power plants, and we generate electricity on-site to solve our lack of power problem. There are two such plants that exist there now. One is expanding, but certainly we could build more. With gas-powered power plants, it won't matter when the sun sets, or if it's a cloudy day, or if the wind isn't blowing, or if there is an ice storm. We could count on a constant supply of power being generated from the natural gas at on-site power plants. There are other alternatives that can be implemented to solve the power problem in the Permian Basin, and an on-site problem deserves an on-site solution, especially when that ability exists. Thank you all very much for hearing me today.
Thank you, ma'am.
And God bless Texas.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you for the time this morning to speak. My name is Paul Grimmie. My wife and I own a cattle ranch in San Saba County, and our property is directly affected to one of the proposed 765 kV lines. I support reliable electricity and the growth of Texas, but I believe the Commission should slow down this 765 kV plan and make sure that we're solving today's problems, not yesterday's. First, the assumptions have changed. The PBRP, which was developed back in 2024, as you know, had approximately 22 gigawatts of gas generation in that plan, and today there are 71 in the current plan. In West Texas alone, the gas queue has grown from 4 gigawatts to 20 gigawatts. That change is large enough that the assumptions behind this multi-billion-dollar transmission decision should be updated. Second, the question isn't whether transmission is needed, it's how much is needed after accounting for this changing generation picture. Now, if I understood correctly, each of these three proposed lines can transfer 5 gigawatts of power. 3 lines would be 15 gigawatts in total. And that compares to the 20 gigawatts of new natural gas generation that's now in the West Texas queue. Now, what happens if this transmission requirement if a substantial portion of that generation is built? This deserves fresh analysis. Finally, the 180-day process is too compressed for a decision of this magnitude. The SOA judges found that the deadline created significant compressed schedule and was particularly punishing for interveners, for staff, and for decision makers. Utilities can spend years planning these projects, but landowners often only have a few weeks to determine what is proposed and how to develop their cases. At the same time, Sempra, who is Oncor's parent company, is presenting the $8 billion Permian Basin Reliability projects to its investors as part of Oncor's base capital plan and describes them as ordered by the Public Utility Commission of Texas. That investment creates a natural incentive to move forward, but this is precisely why the regulatory process needs to remain independent, deliberate, and based on current information. The legislature has indicated that it wants to address these issues in 2027, including changes to the process itself and also market reforms that could encourage even more local gas generation. Commissioners, this is ultimately about taking private property for a need that has not yet been fully reevaluated through a process that is too compressed to reliably resolve that uncertainty. I'm asking you to make sure that Texas takes private property for a generational infrastructure project. It needs to make sure that it's carefully established, that the alternatives have been fairly evaluated, and the process has been thorough enough to get the decision right. Give the legislature the opportunity to address these issues in 2027 before we commit Texas to these projects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Could Jason Houghton, Nelda Houghton, and Eddie Houghton come up to the table, please?
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Gleeson, Commissioners. My name is Jason Houghton, and I'm a Bell County landowner, and I participated pro se in the Commission's transmission process. I'm here on project 58317 to discuss the process, not the merits of any of the pending dockets. I spent the last 5 months in your process. My written statement I submitted as item 30 in the docket identifies 16 issues with the process. But today I want to leave you with 2 problems and 3 practical fixes. First, before an application is filed, the applicant holds public meetings and notifies landowners near the preliminary routes. Those owners have months to talk to neighbors, find counsel, and hire experts. But if a route's added when the application is filed, a newly affected landowner enters a 30-day intervention window with no runway. It's the same project, it's got the same potential impact, but it has radically different opportunity to participate. Second, if the landowner intervenes, the full contested case rules attach. The published rule says that a statement of position or testimony is due 3 working days before the hearing, unless another deadline is imposed, an order that may set it much earlier. Missing that deadline can trigger sanctions, but they've been implemented as expulsion, resulting in the loss of participation rights. And the rules provide no defined cure period for the individualized warning. So my requests are modest. At filing, require that the applicant certify every route segment was covered by the public meeting notice and provide supplemental notice and time when it was not. Require individualized warning and short opportunity to cure before a landowner can lose party status. And give every docket one authoritative plain language calendar showing the deadlines that actually control them. These changes don't require new legislation, and they will improve the record, protect property rights, and will do so without slowing reliability. My full statement and my recommendations I filed in project 58317 as item number 30. I would hope you'd look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton.
Good morning. My name is Nelda Houghton, and I am here as a Texas landowner who has personally experienced the PUCT process. I'm asking you to please consider whether ordinary landowners are given a meaningful opportunity to participate. My first concern is a meaningful notice. Receiving legal notice does not mean that you understand what that means. A landowner may suddenly have to learn intervention, deadlines, discovery, testimony, maps, and evidence to protect their home and property. This is especially difficult for elderly, rural, and unrepresented landowners. Many of my elderly neighbors have never even used a computer or don't own one. And yet everything has to be submitted online in different formats. And so it's very difficult to do. Second, landowners should have an opportunity to verify the information being used about their property before the hearing. People who live on the land often know facts that cannot be seen from a computer screen. They should be allowed to identify errors and omissions before those facts are relied upon in a routing decision. The burden should not fall entirely on an individual landowner to discover those errors after the application has already been filed. Third, when a route is added or materially changed, newly affected landowners should receive an opportunity to participate. They should not enter the process after others have already had months to communicate, organize, and provide information. Fourth, Oncor's own witness stated that he had no guidelines for routing transmission lines through a state-declared disaster area. Yet the project would cut directly through Salado tornado recovery, just as people are beginning to rebuild. With no clear policy to protect recovery efforts, public safety, or the affected community. Finally, I ask the Commission to make this process more accessible through plain language instructions, telephone and paper options, and reasonable protections for elderly, rural, and pro se landowners. The Commission's procedures should not intentionally favor those who have early intervention, attorneys, technical experts, or experience with regulatory proceedings. Let's be fair to all Texans. PUCT, you can do better than that. Thank you.
Thank you.
See why my family made me go last. I think they've been in my computer copying some of my notes. Good morning, Commissioner Gleeson and Commissioners. My name is Eddie Houghton. I am a small landowner from Salado, Texas. I would like to address 4 policy and procedure issues. First, unequal notice. I received my notice on April the 1st with an intervention deadline of April the 27th. That gave me only 26 days to learn complex process, investigate the proposed routes, and gather information to protect my rights. Other landowners had 10 months. Second, transparency and equal consideration when routes change. Through an RFI, I learned that a neighboring landowner's attorney had recommended moving a link away from that property because of a future development. The resulting change placed that link 142 feet from my home. That landowner had an opportunity to advocate for change, while I had no comparable opportunity to respond. I'm asking for transparent record of who requests route changes, when, why, and for an equal opportunity to respond. Third, a short response time limited my ability to contribute useful information. After the SOA hearings closed, I thought of hundreds of questions that I should have asked the applicants on cross-examination about their environmental assessment, their omissions, their errors, and the information they used to compare routes. Those questions could have helped develop information useful to SOA and for this commission, but by then I had no opportunity to ask them or place the answers into the record. Newly affected landowners should have a reasonable opportunity to correct important property discrepancies that are listed in a desktop environment assessment. Fourth, I found no formal written request by the applicants to the Department of Defense, Department of the Army, or the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers requesting specific use of existing rights-of-way on federal land. I also found no formal written denial. There were policy statements, there were letters, there was coordination, and there was discussion, but no explanation of why a specific area of remote federal property cannot be used. That raises a simple question. Why should private property bear the burden before there is documented evidence showing federal property with already existing federal rights-of-way were formally pursued and rejected before private property was selected. Commissioners, this process is more than just not fair. When one citizen has months of time and considerable access to influence your decision, while others receive only a few days to make key decisions after already been made, that becomes an injustice. I respectfully ask for stronger safeguards. 1, equal notice. 2, transparent route changes. 3, equal participation. And 4, a fair opportunity to be heard. Texans deserve a process that they can trust, and that the courtesy is being heard before the permanent decisions are made that affect their property. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton.
Marilee Hodge Keller, Tom Keller, and Kevin Kennedy, please come up to the table.
Good morning.
Good morning. Chairman Gleeson and Commissioners, thank you. We appreciate your holding this meeting. My name is Marilee Hodge Keller. My family has ranched in northern Val Verde County for more than 100 years. I'm asking you to do one thing. Before Texas commits billions of dollars and permanently condemns private land for this 765 system, verify that the need still exists under today's facts. This is not a request to compromise reliability. It's a request to verify reliability before making irreversible decisions. A motion filed with this commission on August 11th in the major Permian Basin dockets makes a point that deserves your attention. These lines are not isolated projects. They are interconnected components of a much larger 765 system that could ultimately extend across the state. Once the first major components are approved and billions of dollars are invested, each approval makes the next one harder to reconsider. That's why the need question really needs to be answered now. House Bill 5066 required ERCOT to develop a reliability plan for the Permian Basin. It did not mandate a statewide 765 network. And the assumptions underlying this plan are no longer settled. Texas is now scrutinizing enormous projected data center loads. The governor has directed this commission and ERCOT to examine large load development and the cost those customers impose. The state is itself determining which of these projects are legitimate, which will actually connect, what infrastructure they must pay for, and whether some will ever be built. Those same uncertain loads cannot justify permanent condemnation. General assumptions have changed as well. Texas officials report substantial growth in proposed West Texas generation since the original Permian Basin analysis, and you have heard from people in the Permian Basin today that that is the case. So I ask if both the load side and the generation side have materially changed, why would you not rerun the models before taking the land? Even if ERCOT demonstrates a reliability need, which they have not, that does not answer the next question. Why 765 kV? Require an updated analysis comparing 765 against 345 expansion, existing corridor upgrades, advanced transmission technologies, strategically located generation storage, demand response, and combinations of those alternatives. Return the models, verify the loads, update the generation assumptions, test the alternatives, verify each line. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Gleeson, Commissioners, thank you. My name is Tom Keller. I'm her husband, so I won't talk about our ranch. But I'm testifying for both myself and for the Devil's River Association, since our ranch is on the Devil's River. I'm here about the Permian Basin Reliability Plan itself, not about any particular route, per Chairman Gleeson's agenda. My request is simple. that you direct ERCOT to reappraise this plan against current facts and hold certification of the 3 765 kV import paths until that reappraisal is done. And I want to give you 5 reasons and 1 question with a little more detail than my wife went into. First, this configuration was your choice, not the legislature's. Second, the load has not been verified, and the state has said so. Third, the generation in the Permian Basin you assumed would not come has come or is in process. Fourth, no one has ever compared this to alternatives. You heard from Senator Sparks about that. Fifth, these paths cross land the state itself has flagged as special. Okay, the configuration was your choice, not the legislature's. 2 weeks ago, Chairman Gleeson said that the House Bill 5066 did not require 765 kV systems. It required ERCOT to submit a plan for serving the Permian Basin. So with respect, a choice this commission made on 2024 information is a choice this commission can revisit on current information, not stale information. Second, the load has been verified and the state has said so. A few days ago, the governor ordered the audit of every data center in the interconnection queue and directed that any project failing to comply be denied connection. Sounds good. ERCOT is tracking more than 1,800 projects at a request of over 474 gigawatts. That's more than 5 times the all-time peak demand, this month? Roughly 90% of that data has been testified by ERCOT as being for data centers. That's not a forecast, it's a list of possibilities. And when you surveyed this industry, requested the survey of this data center industry of over 200 data centers about its power and water use, only 28 data centers responded. The plan's need case rests on that number. Is that my time?
No, please finish your statement.
Oh, thank you. Third, the generation you assumed would not come has come. You've just heard testimony from Senator Sparks and Representative Buckley. The queued gas generation in West Texas has grown from 4 gigawatts when this plan was installed to 20 gigawatts. Now, the 765 kV lines would import somewhere between 9 and 15 gigawatts. So you've already got more generation asking to be built in the Permian Basin than these 3 lines, when they're completed, will import. Fourth, no one has really compared this to the alternatives. The applicant's needs witness testified that no independent alternative analysis was performed. I'm talking about one transmission line specifically. Commission staff witness testified to the same thing, your staff. The proposal for decision makes no finding on the question at all of alternatives. Fifth, these paths cross land the state itself has flagged. Many of the routes in one of the lines would cross land held by foreign owners covered by the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act. And whether the state should cite SITE, critical grid infrastructure across it, is a question to answer before certificates are issued, not after. So the question is, and I'll suspend that for time, what I'm asking you to do is direct ERCOT to appraise the 3 import paths before the legislature convenes with a current generation mix with accurate data center load as verified by the governor's audit rather than as self-reported, and with a real comparison to alternatives that do not require cross-state transmission. And hold up until this reappraisal is finished. You have already abated a case in this plan past its 180-day statutory deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I have my written testimony if it matters. Thank you.
Can we turn in the written testimony to you?
think that's,
And thank you for extending my time. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Kevin Kennedy.
Good morning. My name's Kevin Kennedy. I'm a landowner from Mahomet, Texas, which is in Burnett County, and I'm directly affected by Permian Import Path 2. And I'm going to read y'all a letter if I can get through it. Commanded Sea of the Alamo, Behar, February 24th, 1836. To the people of Texas and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots, I'm besieged by 1,000 or more Mexicans under Santa Ana. I've sustained a continual bombardment and cannonade for 24 hours and have not lost a man. The enemy has demanded a surrender at discretion. Otherwise, the garrison will be put to the sword if the fort is taken. I've answered with a cannon shot, and our flag waves proudly from the walls, and I shall never surrender or retreat. Then I call on you in the name of liberty, of patriotism, and of everything dear to the American character to come to our aid with all dispatch. The enemy is receiving reinforcements daily and will no doubt increase to 3,000 or 4,000 in 4 or 5 days. If the call is neglected, I'm determined to sustain myself as long as possible and die as a soldier who never forgets what is due to his honor and that of his country. Victory or death. William Barrett Travis, Lieutenant Colonel Commandant. P.S. The Lord is on our side. When the enemy appeared in sight, we had not 3 bushels of corn. We have since found in deserted houses 80 or 90 bushels and got into the walls 20 or 30 head of beeves. Travis. I submit to you that this Permian Basin Plan feels to us just like this. This threat of Texas is more internal, or maybe it comes from our West Coast, but it's no less real. For the past 14 months, my family and all my neighbors across Central Texas have been besieged under continual bombardment and cannonade by forces immeasurably larger, more experienced, and better equipped than ourselves. But thus far, we have not yet lost a man. We made the same stoic yet desperate call for aid. And like when Travis penned that letter 190 years ago, we did not know if that aid would arrive in time to save those of us on these Permian import paths. That decision lies largely with you. But our call has been heard. Lieutenant Governor, Representative Buckley, Senator Sparks, and 40 or 50 other senators and representatives have heard us. Soon, millions of East Texans will hear. And I believe that Representative Buckley and Senator Sparks will be our Sam Houstons, and that the 90th legislature will be our San Jacinto. Significant changes are needed, and independent landowners must have a seat at the table of reform. I want a seat at that table. Together, we landowners, you and the legislature, can secure Texas for the coming decades. Inaction is not an option. God bless Texas. God bless Tanya Tucker. And remember the Alamo. Thank you all.
Mia Sarat, Carla Wills, and John Burrow. Would you please come up?
To you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, Commissioners. My name is Mia Surratt, and I am the founder of Hill Country Land and Legacy Alliance. I'd like to start by reading you something without telling you who said it. The 180-day schedule was extremely fast in these types of cases. It has been challenging to try these. That wasn't a landowner, and it wasn't an intervener's attorney arguing for more time. That was Oncor's own counsel at this commission's June 17th meeting answering a question at this table. When the applicant's own lawyer tells you that the statutory timeline is extremely fast, unyielding, challenging even for experienced counsel, and I quote, appropriate for about 65% of the CCN cases he sees, That is no longer just a complaint from people struggling to navigate the process. It is evidence of a structural problem from someone who knows this process exceptionally well. And discussions like that are not just happening in this room. On August 11th, the Oncor-founded group Texans for Responsible Infrastructure Investment published that the process should be fair and transparent, that landowners deserve respect, and that process changes need to be made. However, on August 12th, one day later, that language was gone. There was no discussion of process reform or fairness. The message was urgency, saying every month of delay is time Texas cannot spare. That contrast demonstrates one thing very clearly. It is easy to support procedural reform when reform is discussed in the abstract, but the real test comes when protecting the process requires time. I have hosted 16 meetings and helped hundreds of landowners understand different parts of this process. I have watched people struggle with compressed intervention and testimony deadlines, unfamiliar procedural requirements, and technical systems required simply to participate. So I am submitting the written comments detailing these barriers and recommendations for addressing them. When the commission prepares its legislative recommendations, as you have said you do before every session, please do not let the admissions by the applicants disappear into the record. Please tell the legislature that experienced attorneys on every side of these proceedings say that the 180-day timeline does not work well for cases of this magnitude, and that even the applicant's own counsel described the schedule as unyielding. We, the landowners, don't expect that participating will guarantee we get the outcome we want. But we should have a genuine opportunity to influence that outcome, because a right that exists on paper but cannot realistically be exercised isn't much of a right at all. And a procedural reform that protects only the next landowner does nothing for the Texan who has already been required to exercise those rights under the very timeline we can all acknowledge is inadequate. The evidence clearly shows that these extraordinary cases require a different process, and that conclusion has to mean more than we'll do better next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, all. My name is Carla Wills. I'm a member of the Hill Country Land and Legacy Alliance. I received my notification of the public meeting a few days prior to the meeting date. My notice came in a plain white envelope with no return address. I thought that was interesting. The one-year timeline was compressed to 180 days. So the most expensive proposed project in Texas history had half the time any other project had. I thought that was a tactical move. We paid millions to attorneys. There were not enough attorneys. Many interveners had to just represent themselves, and they did a great job. Thousands of landowners were not properly notified, and many did not have the benefit of a public meeting. I say they received no due process. At the SOA hearing, the cross-examination of applicant witnesses was 13 minutes. That was 97 and a half seconds over 8 witnesses. And a 5-day limit for a hearing of this size was ludicrous. No due process for interveners. The applicant provided ERCOT with data showing the need. The big beneficiary of the project was allowed to prove the need. I'm just going to say top donors to Abbott's campaign include oil and gas executives, Elon Musk, and Oncor. I think everybody knows that. So I urge you, please deny the applicant's CCN concerning the 765 kV lines. God bless Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is John Burrow. I'm a landowner, Bell County, and I'm allied with all these folks back here, these landowners, not with Senator Sparks and also Representative Buckley. They've come to our aid. As Kevin Kennedy was saying, we need someone to come to our aid. I'm not here to discuss any of the pending contested cases. I'm really here to talk about 3 principles that I believe will strengthen Texas for generations to come. First, we all agree we need reliable Texas, a Texas grid. Reliable generation, though, should come first. Transmission should follow. Transmission does not generate electricity, it moves electricity. We need to build dependable, dispatchable generation before we even consider transmission investments being made. We need to protect both the grid and also the Texas ratepayers. You can transmit power, but you cannot generate it. But it doesn't generate it. Generation should lead, transmission should follow. The second principle I want to talk about is really the need to protect private property rights. 96% of Texas is privately owned. People from all over the place come to Texas for that reason. So when the state authorizes eminent domain to take property, we deserve transparency, a meaningful voice, and an opportunity to participate. You're hearing that consistently here. That's a theme here. Fairness produces trust and better decisions. Public trust begins with transparency and respect for private property. The third thing is I want to keep Texas, Texas. The strongest Texas principle is the respect for private property. We all learned that in the 7th grade. Rural Texans are the backbone of our state. And I stole this from someone on the 29th. He said, the cowboy is the true symbol of Texas. It's people like Eddie Houghton and Kevin Kennedy wearing those hats over there. It's not major corporations. I'm an Aggie, and I can even say a longhorn is a great symbol of Texas, but I want to saw them horns off. So today may be our Alamo, but I will tell you, November will be the battle for San Jacinto. So commissioners, the 3 principles work together: a reliable Texas grid, private property rights, and we want to keep Texas, Texas. So when we build a reliable generation first, respect private property, maintain public confidence through transparent processes, the cowboy wins, Texas wins. So thank you for your time. And I want to add on, remember the Alamo, God bless Texas, and God bless Tanya Tucker. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Would Elena Folgueras, Laura Crawford, and Karen Skelton come to the front?
Good morning. My name is Elena Folgueras, and I am here on behalf of American Stewards of Liberty. ASL echoes everything that the prior speakers have stated, and we agree with all of those statements. I did have something prepared today that I was going to say. However, I think at this point you've heard most of what I was going to say, so I'm going to deviate a little bit from that. When I was growing up, my dad raised me on 3 anecdotes. The first one being, nothing worth having in life is easy. The second being, you're only as good as the last thing you did. And the third being, you're never the smartest person in the room. And I want to focus on that last one. And it's absolutely not meant as an insult. It is meant as an opportunity to listen and learn and assume that going into something, there's always something that you can take away. And the landowners here are a great example of that. They're the ones that are going to be truly affected by these lines. They're the ones that are affected by the process. And I know, Chairman Gleeson, you sat through part of that 15-hour Senate committee hearing last week, and you heard how many of these landowners are affected and how much they truly care, not only about their own property, but about their neighbors and about the state of Texas as a whole. And so I just want to leave here today with the message of listening to these people, listening to our state representatives, and using that as an opportunity to learn from it and grow and make the right decision moving forward, and letting the legislature review this process to protect the landowners who are truly affected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Crawford. I am from Glen Rose, Texas, and I represent Protect the Biloxi Valley. I am here
Ma'am,
to,
if you could just move a little closer so the court reporter can hear. Thank you.
I would like to thank Senator Sparks, Representative Buckley, and Representative Slawson for their pleas, and I say their pleas are spot on. I'm here to speak for the valley that cannot speak for itself. I'm here to speak for the generational landowners, the century ranchers in the valley, the homesteaders in the valley, and retirees like myself who have tied our retirement, our savings up into our land. We need your help. And I attended the public meeting in Stephenville. So we did get notice, but I attended the meeting. The facility was so undersized. There were people who waited 2 hours outside to get into the crowded facility. And then it was so crowded, you could not ask the questions you needed to ask, get the information you needed. It was very, very poorly planned. That was inadequate. So that's when you actually got to go to a public meeting. The plan for the 765 kV lines in our valley attracted 4,000 acres of data centers and 4 gas power plants. This shows inadvertently that you can attract local power in a location. We don't want it, but you can attract it. Another point, I worked 32 years in the oil and gas industry. In a normal environment, much less this dynamic environment, we would never use 5-year-old data to make a decision in my career. I would beg you to not do that either. And only a third point, only the legislature should be making decisions of this impact where you're talking about taking away property rights. I beg you to please abate and please reevaluate. And God bless Texas.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Karen Skelton. I am a citizen of the state of Texas with the 8 generations of family that came on various potato blight boats from Ireland and Germany. I have a background in complex commercial real estate. I have an MBA from UT, and among other things, I serve as a special Travis County Commissioner for eminent domain. So I do understand the property issues. HB 5066 has changed the approach to large infrastructure projects from reactive to proactive, which sounds good, but in this case has been interpreted in a way that's not normal. This means that an unengineered schematic plan submitted by the applicants, upon which a seminal $33 billion at a minimum investment decision is being made, is unverified. If this was on Wall Street, a project of this type would never, ever be underwritten on such old, stale data and with such a huge impact on so many private people. The actual cost is not verified. The actual need is not verified. No consideration, as far as I could tell, was given to alternatives, but there are alternatives and people have spoken to them. And another one is the, what is it called? The small modular reactors that are used on submarines and aircraft carriers, and is proven. And David Crowley, who just won the Democratic nomination for the Maine election in November in Wisconsin for the governor of Wisconsin, I happened to see him night before last being interviewed. He was talking about data centers and the demand, and he said something like that he believed in the Beyonce approach. And the interviewer said, well, what is the Beyonce approach? And he said, BYONCE, bring your own clean, new energy. I urge the commission to abate this and let it go back to the legislature for reconsideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Emily Martin Howell, Grant Chaplin, and Brent Bennett.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Emily Martin Howell. I'm from Lingleville, Texas in Erath County. I was made aware of these lines within the 30-day window that goes the whole entire back of my property. So I would lose 300 feet of the back of my property the way that it's laid out. That lit a fire in me. Had a neighbor group. They were able to obtain an attorney, but I wasn't okay with just going that route because I looked around and I saw all the neighbors who couldn't have attorneys. And so for the last nearly 5 months of my life, I've spent every day helping people advocate for themselves in this process. There should not ever be a time when neighbors are the ones that have to help their neighbors advocate for their property rights against the government of elected officials that we elected using our tax dollars. I do appreciate what y'all have done in helping. We've had people that have called your offices and they have been very, very receptive and they've helped our people. And so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for what you've done to this point. I want to thank you for what you're going to do in the future, because I know that you can see that there are problems. If you didn't see that there were problems, we wouldn't be here today having this discussion. And so I thank you for what you've done, and I thank you for what you're going to do in the future to help landowners so that we're not at this table again having to feel like it's us against you. We're all in this together. We all have to live here, and we all have to do this. And so, yes, we do need a secure grid, but we need to make that with current decisions and looking at all things, not having companies that are going to make all the money off of it be the sole push of the decisions. And so I thank you for your time, and I thank you for what you're going to do, not just for us, but for what you're going to do in revising this plan going forwards, because you're the voice, you're the one that have heard, your offices have heard our voices, and you're the ones that are going to have to advocate for us in the legislature. We're still going to be there. We're not going anywhere, but we need you to also advocate and you to be able to do the things that are needed now. And we need you to deny these applications that are current now, because you can see I'm here as a young person in the middle of the day in a work week. There's a lot of people that cannot be able to do that, and I'm here to advocate for them the same as I've been advocating. We had thousands of people file on our line. We lost over 600 of them because they didn't meet a testimony requirement, that many of them filed the paper that was in the Oncor packet that didn't tell them they had a testimony requirement, told them to file one paper. And then from that, we lost hundreds of people from being able to have their voice. And as soon as they did that, they all started blowing my phone up 7 days a week. I'm on the phone till 10 o'clock at night, starts again at 7 in the morning. That should never be the case. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for the changes that you're going to make.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Grant Chaplin, and I'm here today to express my support for the recent letter submitted to you by Senator Sparks and Representative Buckley, in which they asked the commissioners to defer final decisions on the proposed transmission line segments until after the end of next year's legislative session. The land I own and grew up on will not be directly affected by the proposed lines, and I understand that eminent domain is a necessary evil. I am here because I believe every Texan deserves a fair process before their land is taken from them. George Washington is often credited with saying freedom and property rights are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. If there is truth in that statement, then we should all agree that the bar for exercising eminent domain must remain exceptionally high, because what is ultimately at stake is not just property, but individual liberty itself. I would argue that in Texas, that bar should be even higher. Few things have been as central to the identity, livelihood, and aspirations of Texans as the right to own and steward their own piece of land. From family farms and ranches to small businesses and homes passed from one generation to the next, land represents far more than an asset on a balance sheet. It embodies the independence, opportunity, hard work, and the freedom to build a future on one's own terms. When government exercises the extraordinary power of eminent domain, it should do so only with the greatest restraint and for a truly compelling public purpose. Texans have long believed that ownership of property is not merely an economic right, but a cornerstone of personal freedom. That principle deserves our highest level of protection. I ask the commissioners today to provide that level of protection to their fellow Texans by agreeing to further delay the final decision on all the 765 kV segments until after the legislative session is completed next year. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Gleeson and Commissioners. Brent Bennett with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And thank you for holding this hearing today and for doing your best to tackle these difficult problems. The bottom line that we want to bring forward today is that we need to resolve the market design issues that are at the root of ERCOT's grid reliability problems first, rather than continuing to cover over those flaws with more centrally planned transmission. The Commission should seize this unique opportunity to solve this problem now, when the choices are clear and the costs and risk are becoming too much for Texans to bear. Since Winter Storm Uri, the ERCOT grid's added over 30 gigawatts of solar, 20 gigawatts of storage, 10 gigawatts of wind, and only 4 gigawatts of gas. That means the current grid is becoming more vulnerable to a winter storm every year. If the current trend continues, we estimate that a 1 in 10 winter storm in 2030 would lead to a multi-day outage exceeding 20 gigawatts in magnitude, regardless of how much new transmission is built. If our experience with the CREZ lines is any indication, more transmission in the absence of market reform will make these imbalances worse over the long term, and that's our primary concern today. Our concern with the 75 kV step plan is that it's predicated on a single generation mix and a continuation of this trend without any assessment of how the plan would fare in a generation mixes. What the Commission and ERCOT need to develop is a plan, or maybe multiple plans, predicated on connecting reliable energy-dense generation to meet growing demand, and then assess those plans against the current plan. Today, we submitted a proposal in docket number 55718 outlining how that study could be done, and it's broadly similar to what ERCOT CEO Woody Rickerson proposed and kind of contemplated in a letter to Representative Guerin a couple days ago, actually. The current CCNs, we believe, should be denied and not reconsidered until the legislature has had an opportunity to debate the current plan against at least one alternative plan resulting from this new study. And we know that it'll take time, and that's difficult, but we know it's possible. ERCOT can do it. Our research gives us confidence that a generation mix with the majority of new generation coming from natural gas instead of wind, solar, and storage will require far less transmission while also producing a more reliable grid. We appreciate the Commission's consideration of our request and are ready to help you as you grapple with these difficult decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa Duckworth.
I'm the only one?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I came here this morning, not planning to talk, having no notes, and the nice young man, middle-aged man downstairs said, I think you're going to talk anyway. So I'm not eloquent, I'm not very verbose, but I'm glad I'm last because I agree with everything that's been said, and I appreciate your service on this commission very much. I'm going to speak from the heart just a little bit. And forgive me if I'm making any political connections. That's not my intent. I'm 74. I've been here a while. I have 7 grandchildren. I am a landowner in Burnett County that would be affected, but I think this is not going to happen. I'm not psychic, but I think I'm a good judge of character. I think this state has lost its moral compass, the same way that we look at television and there's a school shooting or a shopping mall shooting every day, and we just think, oh, that's too bad. But the powers that be allow it to happen because of various laws or lack of laws. I think probably Oncor and more importantly, Sempra is running this whole thing. They've contributed many, many dollars. And this is how the CEO makes his $23 million a year. I'm well off, but I don't make $23,000. $23,000? I make more than $23,000 a year. I don't make $23 million a year. I think that we need to reassess and not become glazed over in what we see happening. People love their land. They love the wildlife that lives on their land. I'm very much an introvert. I'm very much a liberal. I see the value in animals. I see the value in every plant, every tree, every bat that eats millions of insects a year, which I monitor for. I see the value in water or lack thereof. I see the value in clouds that provide rain or no rain. And I just hope that we can all reassess and think, this is not right. We don't need to kick the can. We don't need to pause it. We don't need to delay it. We need to deny it because it's not right. It's on our land. Eminent domain has become too broad. If you need to widen a road, take a little of the land, pay the person for it, understood. If something must be built, understood. But there are other ways to power these data centers. They're coming. We don't know the true purpose of all of them. They're coming. But I believe in what Senator Sparks said, I believe that's his name, that natural gas is the answer. I hope that we become less immune to all of the bad things that are happening in our state. Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Alex, that concludes.
Yes, that
testimony.
concludes public comment.
So commissioners, we're going almost an hour and a half. I'd suggest we give our court reporter a 10-minute break. Does 10 minutes work? And let's come back at 11:05 and continue with the rest of the agenda. Does that work for everyone?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll stand in recess until 11:05 a.m. We'll reconvene this meeting of the Public Utility Commission of Texas at 11:07 a.m. Ron, that'll take us now to item number 2. Again, the commissioners, the goal here was to just really, we've had a hearing. We're going to have another hearing next week that's going to include 765 discussion. So I wanted to, just for context and situational awareness, give everyone a better understanding of where each of these dockets is in the process. This way, everyone has a better understanding, I think, of where we are with each one of these proceedings. So, Ron, will you lay out item number 2, please?
Yes, sir. Item number 2 is 59029. It's the application of Oncor Electric Delivery Company, LLC, to amend its certificate of convenience and necessity for Longshore switch, drill hole switch, 765 kilovolt transmission lines project in Andrews, Culberson, Ector, Glasscock, Howard, Loving, Martin, Midland, Reeves, Winkler, and Winkler counties. The hearing on the merits in this case was held by the State Office of Administrative Hearings, or SOA, on March 2nd through 4th, 2026, and the record closed on March 13th, 2026. The ALJs filed their proposal for decision on May 12th, 2026. The deadlines to file exceptions to the PFD was May 26th, 2026, and the replies were due June 2nd, 2026.
So again, on this one, we have a PFD filed and the record is closed.
That's correct.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions on this? All right. And this is also, we heard oral argument in this proceeding previously.
Yes, on June 17th.
Okay. Ron, will you lay out item number 3, please?
Sir, item number 3 is docket number 59315. It's the application of Oncor Electric Delivery Company, LLC, to amend the certificate of convenience and necessity for the Dinosaur-Longshore switch, 765 kilovolt transmission line project in Borden, Bosque, Brown, Callahan, Koch, Coleman, Comanche, Eastland, Erath, Glasscock, Hamilton, Hood, Howard, Jones, Mitchell, Nolan, Runnels, Shackelford, Somerville, Stevens, Sterling, and Taylor counties. The hearing on the merits in this case was held by the SOA on May 4th through 11th, 2026, and the record closed on May 26th, 2026. The ALJs in that case filed their proposal for decision on July 24th, 2026, and the deadlines for to file exceptions to the PFD was July 31st, 2026, and replies were due August 7th, 2026. So the proposal for decision has been filed and the record is closed as well in this case.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for Ron on this case? Ron, will you lay out item number 4, please?
Yes, sir. Item number 4 is docket 59182. It's the joint application of Oncor Electric Delivery Company, LLC, and LCRA Transmission Service Corporation to amend their certificates of convenience and necessity for the Big Hill Substation to Sand Lake Switch 765 kilovolt transmission line project in Crane, Crockett, Irion, Pecos, Reagan, Reeves, Schleichler, Tom Green, Upton, and Ward counties. The hearing on the merits in this case was held by SOA on March 25th through 27th, 2026, and the record closed on April 10th, 2026. The ALJs filed their proposal for decision on June 10th, 2026, and the deadline to file exceptions to the PFD was July 30th, 2026, and replies were due August 6th, 2026. The PFD has been filed and the record is also closed in this case.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. Commissioners, questions on this docket?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ron, we lay out item number 5, please.
Yes, sir. Item number 5 is docket number 59475. It's the joint application of Oncor Electric Delivery Company, LLC, and LCR Transmission Service Corporation to amend their certificate of convenience and necessity for the Bell County East Switch to Big Hill Substation 765 kilovolt transmission line project in Bell, Burnett, Concho, Coryell, Lampasas, Llano, Mason, McCullough, Menard, Milam, Mills, Sensaba, Schleichler, Tom Green, and Williamson counties. The hearing on the merits in this case was held by SOA on June 8th through 12th, 2026, and the record closed after the replies to closing arguments were filed in that matter. The proposal for decision in this case has yet to be filed with the commission. So the deadlines to file exceptions and replies will depend on the date that PFD is filed. So to be clear, the date, the record has closed. The commission has not received the PFD in this matter yet.
So we're waiting on SOA to finish their work and get us a proposal for decision.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioners, questions on this docket? Okay.
Yeah.
Ron, we lay out item number 6, please.
Okay. Item number 6 is docket number 59336. It's the joint application of AEP Texas, Inc. and City of San Antonio, acting by and through the City Public Service Board to amend their certificate of convenience and necessity for the Howard-Solstice 765 kilovolt single circuit transmission line in Itasca, Bandera, Bear, Crockett, Edwards, Kerr, Kinney, Medina, Pecos, Real, Sutton, Terrell, Uvalde, and Valverde counties. The hearing on the merits in this case was held by SOA on May 19th through 22nd, 2026, and the record closed on June 1st, 2026. Sorry. The proposal for decision was filed by the ALJs on July 27th, 2026. So the deadlines to file exceptions to the PFD was August 5th, 2026, and the replies were due August 12th, 2026. So the PFD has been filed and the record is closed in this case.
Thank you for that layout. So again, we're only waiting for a PFD in one case.
That's correct.
Okay. Commissioners, questions or comments on this docket? Okay. Thank you for that layout. So obviously all of our public comment focused on, broadly on these dockets. Again, I wanted to run through this just so Ron had an opportunity to let everyone know where in the process all of these are. As I said in my memo, no decisions will be made today. We'll make decisions as these come before us in each of the individual dockets. But just for context, I want everyone to have an understanding of where these dockets are in the process, because I think that, you know, can shed some light on how far along we are in some of these cases. It's clear from the public testimony as well, and from everything that's in the record, countless amounts of resources and time, particularly from landowners and interveners, has been put into these dockets. And so we will run through each of these and give them the due attention that they require as they come before us. Commissioners, any questions or thoughts broadly on anything around transmission project build out?
No, just thank you for those that came. I know it's a trip and we appreciate it, and we heard your testimony.
No, I certainly agree with those sentiments. Thank you all very much for all of your time and effort that you've put into this. That's the only way the process can work well for all.
Yeah, appreciate everybody coming. It was clear in your testimony that you put a lot of thought into it and spent a lot of time organizing it, and really appreciate that.
Okay. Ron, again, thank you for that layout. And we'll look forward to seeing these come before us as they proceed through the process.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right, will you lay out item number 7, please?
Sure. Item number 7 is project number 58317. It's Senate Bill 6 implementation.
I know ERCOT is here. They made a filing in this project responding to the governor's letter that ERCOT CEO Pablo Vegas and I received. So Chad, Woody, if you all want to come up and maybe just start by going through your filing. I have a couple questions and things I want to clarify. And again, all of this kind of works together, right? The generation, load, transmission, it's all one ecosystem that works together. So I think, you know, we'll probably have a more in-depth conversation at the next open meeting around some of this, but part of the reason I want to bring this up today is we had 3 weeks between open meetings and we received the governor's letter early enough that I felt it was appropriate to have an open meeting before our next scheduled one to have this discussion. So Chad, if you want to go ahead and lay out your filing, that would be helpful.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Gleeson, Commissioners. Chad Seeley with ERCOT. And as the chairman indicated, we received the governor's letter on August 3rd directing the PUC and ERCOT to stop our current Batch Zero interconnection process and not move forward with approving any authorizations to energize for data centers going forward until we conducted a verification process and audit. And so I'm here today to talk about our response to the governor's August 3rd letter and what we need from the commission as we talk about this in more specific detail at the next open meeting next week. So on August 10th, we filed our response to the governor's letter, basically apprising the commission that we had issued a market notice saying that we were no longer to move forward with the Batch Zero interconnection process. That was scheduled to begin in September. And the first critical date to start that study was August 7th, where we would classify all the large loads as either base studied load or base load or studied load. That allowed us to put them in one of the categories that they needed to be in so that we could move forward with the interconnection study process. That interconnection study process was going to take several months. It was anticipated to be completed in April of 2027. So again, starting in September and ending in April in 2027. As part of the PIGR 145 policy requirements that the commission approved, during that same period, ERCOT was going to do a verification process in parallel with the study. And that verification process would mean that we would be looking at all the due diligence that the large loads had done with the utilities and determine the veracity of that information. If at any point during that period, we found that the attestations that had come from the large load entities on behalf of the utilities was not proper or was not truthful, then ERCOT had a process to remove those loads from the study. With the governor's letter, what we're really doing is moving that verification process now to the front of the line before we begin the interconnection study process. So this verification process and audit that we speak about in our letter is the process that we were going to do in parallel with the transmission study that would have taken several months. But now we will do that as a gating item before we begin the interconnection study process. But in order to do that, we have to seek good cause exceptions in front of the commission. So in our filing on August 10th, we laid out 3 good cause exceptions that we will need the commission to consider next week when we come back with more specific details. The first one is this August 7th date. So no large load has a final classification of whether they're base load or studied load. They will not get that classification until we've done the verification process and audit of those large load entities. We will do that verification process and audit of all the large load entities that are eligible to be in the Batch Zero process. Not all large loads that have submitted some type of application to go through our interconnection process. That's referred to as the 474 gigs. We're really focused on those large loads that have met the qualifications of studies that we have and the commercial readiness criteria as part of Batch Zero. That's where our verification process and audit will focus on, that they're eligible to be in this first study that ERCOT is doing. And that's where we'll focus our verification and audit process. That will take us several months. Again, next week, we'll come forward with a more specific timeline in which we're able to move forward with that process. But it will take us several months to go through that process. Again, it was going to already take us about 9 months to go through that process from September to April. We don't anticipate it'll take as long as 9 months to do that, but it is now a gating issue to go through that verification process and audit. So that's the first request, to remove the August 7th final classification that was under Figure 145. The second item is a quarterly stability assessment. So 4 times a year, we do a quarterly stability assessment. The first one was going to be here in August, and then there's another one in November. We're requesting that we continue to proceed forward with that for those large loads that are eligible, so that we're not unnecessarily slowing down those processes. Again, we will not approve any authorizations to energize for large loads, data centers specifically, which was what the governor's letter was about. But there are loads that are positioned to move through some of our other processes. And as part of Figure 145, it recognized, as we went through this one-time transitional period, that we had criteria for large loads that were eligible to move into this next phase, which is the quarterly stability assessment for August and November 1st. So we do have a set of large loads that are eligible, but again, it was tied to their final classification. And since we're not going to do a final classification, then we need the commission to hopefully grant an exception to allow those loads to continue to move forward in the process. The Figure 145 actually acknowledged a February and May 2027 quarterly stability assessment. We're not asking for good cause at that point, because we can probably get through these processes over the next several months and see where we're at, and then come back if we need to for additional good cause exceptions if necessary. And then the third and final item was dynamics models. There was a process in Figure 145 on when we needed to get back to the utility about, and the large load entity about, whether dynamics models were valid or not. We were not able to do that within the time frame, and so we're asking for a little additional time to finish that process, which again is part of this kind of gating criteria on who's eligible to be in the first batch study process. And so we'll need some kind of consideration by the commission to allow us a little bit more time to finish the review of the dynamics models. So again, 3 good cause exceptions, all tied to Figure 145 that this commission considered in June of this year, that we'll be speaking more detail about next Thursday at the open meeting. When we come back next Thursday at the open meeting, we'll have a more specific time frame on the entire process that we're planning to do, which is the verification process and audit. But also in the governor's letter, there was additional information that the governor wanted to have ERCOT gather from data centers. And so we're going to move forward with that initiative as well. That is a separate work stream. So when you think about what's in our filing, there's 2 work streams. There is the verification process and audit, which is tied to Figure 145, which is a gating issue on whether the load is eligible to move forward. And then there's the additional information that the governor wanted us to ask. We're calling that the community impact information. So really think of it as 2 separate distinct processes. Our first focus is on the 75 megawatts and above data centers as far as the Figure 145 verification process and audit. Our second focus on the community impact information, we're proposing to gather all information for data centers that are 25 megawatts and above. And data centers does include crypto facilities. So we think with those 2 separate work streams, we'll accomplish what the governor wanted the PUC and ERCOT to do. And again, we'll come back with more specific details next week and explain that to the commission on the timelines.
Appreciate the layout, Chad. So, the goal of the verification audit is to provide, more certainty and confidence in Batch Zero. You referenced the 474 gig number, and that this won't apply to all of that. Just for everyone's edification, what are the numbers, the gigs that this will apply to?
So that number continues to change, but you're really looking at about 200 gigawatts of potentially eligible large loads in there. And again, we'll have more information as we get through these dynamics models reviews, because if you didn't have a valid dynamics model, then you're not going to be in batch zero. We're still kind of finishing up those processes. There was additional information that large loads had to submit on the commercial side. If they didn't give us all that, then they're not going to be in it. So we're still kind of finalizing what the overall amount of entities and the total size of the large load community is. But from an individual entity perspective, it's going to be between 250 and 300 entities that would be eligible to be in batch zero that we'll be focused on as we go through this verification process.
And you'll be sending out RFIs. So, as we talk about timeline for this, a lot of that timeline will be dependent on how expeditiously these entities respond to your RFIs. So they will control a lot of the timeline based on how well and how quickly they respond to them.
That is correct. I mean, I think that's important to highlight that we're going to do this in a more compressed time frame than we would have done it under the traditional Picker 145 process. So making sure that the TDSPs working with the large load entities and then working with ERCOT can give us the best information back as quickly as possible helps the entire universe of this process moving forward.
And Woody, as we're thinking about, 65 gigs in base and 200 total, could you maybe walk through what kind of the assumptions were for planning purposes, what the generation assumptions, what the transmission assumptions were for batch zero? I think that would be helpful for everyone to better understand.
Is this microphone working?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the batch zero process looks ahead 5 years. So we're building cases over a 5-year period. Those cases include all known generation, includes known retirements of generation, includes generation that has progressed far enough, future generation that's not built yet, that has progressed far enough to be included. It takes wind and solar and uses those resources at levels that are appropriate for the time of day and the average amounts that those are useful. So you put all that together and put it in a map, an electrical map of the existing grid, and then you add these new loads in on top of that, and basically you run a power flow and you look to see if you have reliability problems. And if you do have reliability problems, then you have to make some additions to the grid in order to serve those. That's the basic way that the data from the 27 different TSPs, all the different developers that are developing large loads, all the different generation developers, you take all that information and you put them together in a series of cases that look at future points in time to study the grid.
And in public comment, we heard some discussion around generation and West Texas. When you're doing your planning, if you know, you may not know, do you know about how many projects you planned for to see in West Texas in your planning horizon?
How many large load projects?
So how many generation, as we're thinking through
projects?
Generation, transmission,
We
load?
can get those numbers. I don't have them in front of me right now. I do know, for example, though, that there were, like the TEF projects, in the latest study that we did, there were, I think, 17 or 18 different future TEF units that were included in that study in the west load zone. So as new generation progresses and we get far enough along, we do include those. And so every year when you do the set of studies, you're adding new generation that is yet to be built. And so we do have future generation that isn't on the system today included in those studies.
Are there any other assumptions that go into your planning process that you think would be helpful for people to understand? You make assumptions around generation, you make assumptions around transmission. What are there any other assumptions you make that you think would be good to talk about?
Yeah, I think people we're not planning for a grid that we had 15 years ago. 15 years ago, we had a grid with thermal generation, or maybe 20 years ago now, that was, as long as it had fuel, it could run. And so you could count a 100 megawatt generator as being 100 megawatts. And you could look at load, and you could look at load profiles. The grid we have today, a large percentage of our generation now is intermittent. So if the wind's not blowing, you don't have that generation. Or if the sun is cloudy in the middle of the day, you may not have all of the solar. At night, obviously, you don't have solar generation. And then you have batteries that are limited duration that move power from one time to another, but they may only last for an hour or 2 hours or something like that. So all those things have to be taken into account when you do studies today. So it's important in studies that we do now to look at conditions like in the middle of the night when there's no solar and maybe no wind. How is that load going to get served? And in the case of West Texas, the only way that load gets served is through imports, through transmission, or the existing generation that's there, and whatever wind happens to be blowing that night. And so you look at some scenarios like that. You also look at peak usage. So you look at what happens in the 4 o'clock in the afternoon when everyone has their air conditioners going and the load peaks. What kind of system does it take to serve that? So what we have to do today is much more complicated than what it used to be. You can't just look at a single point in time. You have to look at a peak load, a net peak load, off-peak load, middle of the night, no solar, low wind. Because at the end of the day, if there's a 4 or 5 hour period where people can't have electricity, that needs to be reflected in a study. And so I think that's the biggest change that you see today is just the complexity of the grid that we look at.
So if any of the assumptions changed, you would have to potentially do restudy of a lot of batch. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. And so as projects, particularly transmission projects, are approved, they are incorporated, and you can think of those transmission studies or those studies in general as being layers. So we take existing generation, that's the bottom layer. Existing transmission, that's the bottom layer. On top of that, we add things we know are going to be added. And then we look at other things on top of that. And if you go back and start pulling layers out, that invalidates a lot of the work that's already been done. And there have been several hundred studies that are supporting this batch process. So the results in the batch process, what we put in those studies are based on several hundred other studies that included certain transmission, certain generation. And to pull those out now would require a complete overhaul of the entire process.
So like on the generation side, I know if you look at the generation interconnection queue, there's call it 170 gigs of batteries around the same of solar. You don't count all of that as coming, so it's only those projects that have hit a certain level of maturity. That's right. Is that how you do that?
There are a series of milestones we look at for future generation, and as they click off those milestones, then they do get included in the study. We want to make sure that what we include in the study are things that are highly likely to be built.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for Chad or Woody?
I do have one, it might be something we kind of cover later, but since we're laying it out in what you filed, you mentioned you're going to do RFIs to loads 25 to 75 megawatts as well. And that was obviously not something included with the governor's audit request. This will be separate, but what is the thought process of including those medium-sized loads as well?
Well, the magnitude of those medium-sized loads, two things. The magnitude of them together represents about 15% of the future load. So it's important to quantify what those are. And secondly, a 75 megawatt load is a pretty big load. That's, before data center size loads, that would have been a major manufacturing center. So it's important to know where those are, because the point where they're located on the grid becomes a consideration. And so having good eyes and good resolution on where those medium-sized loads are is an important part of the planning process.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we wanted to kind of be holistic and grabbing as much information as possible to give back to the PUC, to the legislature and the governor by including that universe of 25 megawatts of data centers and crypto facilities and above, because as Woody indicated and what's reflected in the filing is that we have a lot of megawatts of data centers at that medium-sized load. There's a lot of data centers that are 70 megawatts that are trying to come onto the grid. So there is a significant magnitude issue with looking at those medium-sized loads, and just from a holistic standpoint, having all that community impact information on how they're handling water technology, power deliverability, gives a better perspective to the state as we see these loads start to come onto the grid over the next several years.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to piggyback on something and probably say it blunter than you did, but it was in regards to the participation and answering to these audits. You know, I've had some calls from people saying, you know, we need certainty, we don't know what this means, and that is understandable. We always use that word, but in regards to getting certainty, I would say the certainty is now in your hands, large loads. You answer this audit, you provide the information, and that's when you'll know your certainty. So it's up to you to answer and do it well.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, as I've talked to ERCOT, the other benefit of getting the information for the medium-sized loads, which again, to Woody's point, 25 to 75 megawatts is pretty big, is, you know, we heard from multiple members of the legislature today. I think you're going to probably see the results of this this validation, verification audit potentially, you know, have policy issues that end up as discussion points in potential legislation during the legislative session. So I think there's a lot of value in collecting that information as well as we try to look at this holistically. Commissioners, other questions or thoughts?
Probably many thoughts, but I think we've covered most of the territory. But Woody, I am struck by some of the commentary relative to when we talk about the holistic approach, right? Certainly all the transmission generation, all the above that we're thinking about in the future. I think in a pre-batch zero time frame, and I think of the 3 studies that were done over the past couple of years, and the anticipated load that was looking to accommodate. And correct my numbers on this: 110, 115. 1,000 megawatts, 125,000 megawatts. I think we're looking at stress tests and even 150,000 megawatts within these studies. I wonder if you could just comment just a little bit more relative to what we anticipated in a pre-batch zero time frame relative just to the general transmission needs for this state to accommodate what we're trying to do in Texas and certainly economic development.
Yeah, so there were 3 relevant studies that started with the Permian Basin Reliability Plan. So that was the first study that we looked at, and that was in July of 2024. And we looked at load levels in the Permian Basin area that were above 20,000 megawatts. We followed that with an overall ERCOT grid plan, the 2024 regional transmission plan. And that looked at load levels that were in the 150 gigawatt range. And then we did a sensitivity there where we took it back down to 125,000 or 125 gigawatts. And then the following year, we did another 5-year plan. Every year we do a 5-year plan where we look a rolling 5 years out into the future. That plan used a modified load forecast that capped out at about 159 gigawatts in 2032, I believe. And then we did sensitivities on that as well, where we took out like officer letter large loads, and we looked at lower load levels there as well. And what we saw in all of those plans where there were times that all the transmission that was recommended in those plans was needed to serve load, and without it, you would have reliability problems. When I say reliability problems, I mean times when people couldn't have electricity. I mean, bluntly, what a reliability problem is, based on a NERC definition of reliability, is that the grid has to be able to serve people without being damaged itself. So you can't push so much power through the grid that there's thermal damage to the grid, or you can't push the grid to a point where there's a stability problem where you have something like the Iberian Peninsula outage in Spain. You have to keep it below that. And so based on those limitations, what we found, not only at the peak load levels, but also when you reduce the load levels down to lower levels, substantially lower levels, you see that that transmission infrastructure is needed, or something equivalent to that transmission infrastructure is needed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I think, Mr. Chairman, you talked earlier about a holistic approach. And in your verification and audit practice, or audit, performing those kind of going forward, we know that there is a large number in the queue of data centers and the cryptos, but there are also other large loads. And so is your expectation to also, in your auditing and verification process, to include those as well?
It is, and the reason why is, again, a part of Figure 145, we were going to do this process anyway in parallel with the interconnection study. And so there are other non-large loads that are not, there are other large loads that are not data centers in there. Now, granted, that's only a handful of those, but to make sure that we're following kind of the overall Figure 145 process, which again, the stakeholders worked on, the board recommended approval to the commission, and the commission endorsed this in June, we would want to just check those other large loads as well. Again, there's not many of those. The majority of the eligible large loads are data centers and crypto facilities that are in this batch zero interconnection, but there are a handful of large loads that are not data centers. And so we just go ahead and complete the full circle and do the verification process for them. They will not be impacted on the second work stream, which is the community impact information under the governor's letter, because that was only about data centers. But for the verification process, we will go ahead and include all the large loads that are eligible to be in the batch zero transmission study.
And so you mentioned that there were kind of, two work efforts here that you're moving forward with. The second, which is the community impact. And I think, further to maybe Commissioner Yachtman's comment about, what can we do at this point if we are the ones who are responsible for providing that verification data and information that's being asked for. And I would encourage them also to not only look at the actual submittal of information, but also to make sure that if the term is, it makes sense. I mean, do some due diligence in terms of the kind of information that you are submitting, because I think, the sooner you can accommodate and make the information and the data available, and the more responsibility and accountability that you take on yourself in making sure that what you are submitting is, the term is making sense, the better able I think that ERCOT is going to be able to take and assimilate all this data in a timely fashion and get us the information and the reporting that we need.
Agree, Commissioner. Thanks for those comments.
Commissioners, anything else?
No, sir.
I think the only thing I would add, we're obviously going to have a more robust conversation about this next Thursday, what this will exactly look like. I will say, you mentioned, Chad, in your filing the quarterly stability assessments for August and November. I know there were previous ones done, and there may be some questions about where those stand. So we'll also need to kind of work through that issue as well with you all. But again, more to come as we're working through this in real time. So appreciate the layout, appreciate all the information. Commissioners, that's everything on our agenda. Anything else? Ron? Good. All right. With there being no further business before us, this meeting of the Public Utility Commission of Texas is hereby adjourned.